my beloved souls. Before we begin, I want to take a sacred moment to thank each and every one of you who has supported this mission through Super Thanks. Your generosity isn't just financial, it's spiritual. It's fuel for the fire, light for the path, and confirmation that these words are touching the right hearts at the right time. May everything you've sown in faith return to you multiplied in favor, in wisdom, and in divine breakthrough. Now, breathe with me. Not just with your lungs, but with your spirit. Breathe as someone who is not here by accident. You didn't scroll here by chance. You were summoned by something deeper. Maybe you've been feeling an ache, a shift, a stirring, the sense that something invisible has been trying to break you. We're about to name it. You see, there's a power that lies dormant in some but cannot be ignored forever. A sacred fire that doesn't shout, doesn't chase attention, and doesn't need weapons to change the atmosphere. These are God's chosen ones. And if that sentence awakens something in you, it's because you are one of them. You weren't born to scream your truth. You were born to embody it. You weren't sent here to fight the way the world fights. You were sent to transcend it. That's why they don't understand you. Why they mock your silence. Why they feel threatened even when you say nothing. Because what you carry doesn't come from ego, it comes from eternity. And when that dormant fire begins to rise, you don't need to lift a finger. You don't need to clap back. You don't need to explain. You become the storm. Your stillness becomes resistance. Your presence becomes prophecy. Your silence becomes a weapon more terrifying than rage. Chosen ones are not loud. They are lethal through peace. And the world, in all its chaos, doesn't know what to do with people who can't be provoked. So what do? They try to break you quietly, subtly, spiritually, through things most people never see coming. Because you're not being attacked randomly. You're being targeted strategically. That's what this message is about. Today, I'm going to reveal to you 9 silent weapons the enemy uses to cripple those walking in divine alignment. Not obvious attacks, but spiritual setups, energetic traps, subtle sabotage designed to dim your light without ever casting a shadow. These weapons are not thrown, they're whispered. They come dressed in relationships, expectations, and false peace. But they all have one purpose: to stop you before you fully awaken. So before we dive in, I want to anchor this moment in spiritual clarity. If this message has already started stirring something deep inside you, type 999 in the comments. That's your code, your declaration, a signal to the universe, to your angels, to your ancestors, that you are ready. Ready to receive, ready to remember, ready to rise. Because this message is not just content, it's a spiritual initiation. And by the end of it, you'll not only recognize the weapons used against you, you'll realize why they failed. You weren't born to be broken. You were born to become the judgment wrapped in light. God's chosen ones. These 9 silent weapons are meant to cripple you. Silent weapon 1. Their silence is louder than your screams. Chosen one. Have you noticed that when you say nothing, everything starts to shake? That your silence has more weight than the loudest voice in the room? That when you choose not to respond, people begin to panic, unravel, and even confess things you never asked about? That's not a coincidence. That's your spiritual authority in motion. You've been chosen by God, and your silence is not just the absence of noise, it's the presence of power. You don't react like others because you were never made to fit in their battles. You were built to win wars in realms they don't even believe in. That's why when others insult you, mock you, or try to provoke a response, you remain still, not because you're weak, but because your spirit is focused. You don't waste divine energy on temporary noise. And whether they understand it or not, That silence hits deeper than any insult ever could. Why do people fear silence from someone like you? Why does your calm presence become unbearable for those who live in deception? Because your silence is not empty. It is a mirror that reflects people's unhealed wounds, secret motives, and internal guilt. While they scream to be seen, you withdraw, and suddenly they are forced to look inward, not at you, but at themselves. And many can't handle that confrontation. As Scripture says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Your stillness isn't passivity, it's partnership with heaven. It's trusting that the battle belongs to the Lord, and your silence invites him to step in. Consider Martin Luther King Jr. when hatred was screamed in his face, when fists and words were hurled like weapons. He didn't retaliate. He marched, quietly, powerfully. And in that silence, an entire nation was shaken. He didn't need to raise his voice to raise the standard. Like you, chosen one, he understood that silence can shake systems. Now look at your own life. How many times have people tried to bait you into arguments, only to end up arguing with themselves? How many times have you walked away without a word, and yet your absence haunted the entire room? That's because your silence is not lack of response, it's a loaded weapon, a divine echo, one that doesn't shatter the glass, but reveals the cracks. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Stillness is not the absence of activity, it's awareness of who's really in control. And when you, chosen one, walk in that level of surrender, you become immovable. Your silence becomes spiritual warfare, dismantling schemes without a single word. Take Princess Diana as another example. When the world slandered her, when cameras chased her, when rumors tried to reduce her, she didn't scream for attention, she showed quiet grace. Her silence outlived the noise. And today, her legacy speaks louder than any headline that once tried to bury her. That's what God does with those who stay grounded in truth and refuse to fight fire with fire. So, chosen one, how many battles have you won just by refusing to participate? How many lies have crumbled just because you refused to respond? People often mistake your silence for defeat, but they don't understand that your quiet is not giving up, it's leveling up. It's shifting into a dimension where noise cannot touch you and words cannot define you. That's why they overthink, spiral, and obsess. You didn't give them the reaction they craved, and when they can't reach you emotionally, they expose themselves spiritually. The Bible puts it beautifully, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. Proverbs 17:28. Now, imagine how much more powerful the silence of the righteous is. You're not being silent because you have nothing to say. You're silent because what you carry is too sacred to waste on small minds. Keanu Reeves embodies this. He's not known for outbursts, scandals, or noise. He's known for peace, stillness, and mystery. And yet, his impact is undeniable. Why? Because the world is starving for presence that doesn't perform. That's what you offer. You carry a peace that doesn't demand attention, but commands respect. You've probably noticed how some people start explaining themselves when you haven't even asked a question, or how their nervous energy rises just because you walked in the room. That's not ego. That's frequency. That's the sound your spirit makes without your mouth opening. Your silence, chosen one, is not a weakness. It is wisdom wrapped in self-control, and it makes people confront the very parts of themselves they've been avoiding. Your restraint is revelation. It's prophecy without a voice, and it's punishment without revenge. Remember what Jesus did when accused by Pilate. But Jesus remained silent. Matthew 27:14. The Son of God, standing before false accusations, said nothing. Why? Because truth doesn't need to argue, it only needs to stand. and his silence fulfilled prophecy and defeated hell itself. The same Spirit that filled Jesus fills you. The same silence that disarmed demons in ancient days now flows through your obedience. So don't be surprised when your silence rattles those who dwell in lies. It's meant to. Chadwick Boseman offers us a modern parable. While the world speculated about his weight loss, his appearance, his silence, he was quietly fighting a terminal illness. He didn't demand sympathy. He didn't announce his suffering. He poured his strength into legacy. And when the truth came out after his death, the world stood in awe of his dignity. That's what silent warriors do. They build something eternal while the world is busy talking. So, chosen one, why waste your sacred voice trying to convince those who never plan to listen? Why cast your pearls before swine? Why shout to be heard when you were born to be felt? Your silence is sacred. It is a sword of the Spirit, not made of noise but of weight. And when wielded correctly, it pierces through ego, illusion, and manipulation, without violence, without vengeance, without a single sound. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. Isaiah 30:15. That is your code. That is your covering. So the next time they try to pull you into their chaos, remind yourself, God has already spoken over you. Heaven has already sealed your assignment, and you don't need to explain what God has already ordained. Let them shout. Let them spiral. Let them scheme. You, chosen one, be still, and let your silence roar. Silent weapon 2. Their energy will expose every demon you hide. Chosen one, you carry something inside of you that doesn't need permission to speak. It doesn't ask for credentials. It doesn't beg to be recognized. It just is. And when you walk into a room, that isness shifts the spiritual climate, whether people welcome it or not. Your presence doesn't just light up space, it reveals what's hiding in the shadows. You see, the world has become a stage. Most people walk around wearing masks they've forgotten are even on. But when they meet you, someone chosen, someone refined by fire, someone aligned with God's frequency, those masks begin to melt. Not because you exposed them with your words, but because your very presence made it impossible for them to keep pretending. Have you ever noticed how people start getting nervous around you, even when you haven't said a thing? How they begin explaining themselves, confessing secrets, or stumbling through justifications you never asked for? That's not coincidence. That's discernment. That's what happens when divine energy meets counterfeit intentions. Their spirit knows it's being scanned. For God will bring every deed into judgment, with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Ecclesiastes 12:14. But here's the truth. Sometimes God doesn't wait until the afterlife. Sometimes He sends a chosen one into someone's life as the moment of exposure, and that chosen one might be you. Take Mother Teresa, for example. She wasn't a fire-breathing preacher. She didn't shame or accuse. But her purity was so piercing, so sincere, that even politicians, billionaires, and hardened criminals would weep in her presence. Why? Because she carried a presence that revealed what words could not. That's the kind of clarity you walk in. Chosen one, you don't need to catch people in lies. You don't need to dig for dirt or confront them directly. Your energy already brings the hidden into the light, not by force but by frequency. And that frequency, it is tuned to truth. Anything that vibrates beneath that standard begins to fall apart when you're near. You've likely experienced this already. You meet someone, and within minutes, they either want to cling to you or flee from you. Why? Because your spirit disturbs their demons. Not intentionally, but inevitably. You don't even have to know what they're hiding. You just have to be who you are. And their hidden darkness panics under your light. Have you ever wondered why some people suddenly distance themselves without explanation? Why do certain friends, partners, or even family members start to turn cold when you enter a new level of clarity? Because the higher your spiritual frequency rises, the more painful it becomes for others to pretend around you. As Jesus said, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known." Luke 8:17. You, chosen one, are often the carrier of that disclosure. People can deceive the public, lie to their partners, even fool themselves. But they can't hide from a soul that's aligned with divine truth. Look at Anthony Bourdain's story. He was the life of the party, the beloved traveler, the charming storyteller. But when he sat down with deep, reflective people, those who had faced real pain, real poverty, real spiritual weight, something in him always became more raw. He would often break down, become quiet, emotionally exposed. Because truth always pulls truth to the surface, and the chosen always call the unseen into the light. That's why you're misunderstood, why some people resent you, even though you've never wronged them. They don't hate you, they hate what you reveal in them, and you didn't ask to expose it. You just walked in with light, and the darkness had nowhere left to hide. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. That verse doesn't just speak about Christ. It speaks about anyone who carries his light into a spiritually blind world. And you, chosen one, have that light. That's why fakes fall off, why hidden motives get uncovered, why snakes start slithering away before you even say a word. Let's reflect on Nina Simone, a woman whose artistry bled truth and spiritual honesty. Her voice wasn't always pretty, but it was real. So real that it made people uncomfortable. She didn't just sing, she exposed. She made the hidden pain of a generation surface, and because of that, many loved her while others feared her. Isn't that the same energy you carry in your presence? People might not say it aloud, but when they stand in front of you, their soul knows, "I can't fake it here." And that knowing either drives them into growth or into retreat. When someone meets a chosen one, they are not merely meeting a person, they are confronting a spiritual mirror. And mirrors don't judge, they reveal. So when demons start to surface, addictions start to shake, and buried traumas start coming up in your presence, it's not because you're attacking, it's because your anointing is too clean for dirt to stay buried. Now ask yourself how many people have walked into your life and ended up either transformed or exposed. How many friendships dissolved because someone couldn't lie in your presence anymore? And how many people claimed you changed when really you just started vibrating at a higher level that exposed their unwillingness to grow? Whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. John 3:21. That is what you do. You bring things into the light, not through confrontation, not through accusation, but simply by being. Take Malcolm X. Before the world respected him, it feared him, not because he was violent, but because his presence demanded truth. He wasn't trying to make people uncomfortable, he just was. He spoke with such conviction that lukewarm minds melted or rebelled. Many didn't hate the man, they hated the mirror he held up, just like they do with you. So here's the truth, chosen one. You are not dangerous because of what you say. You're dangerous because of what you reveal just by standing there. You don't destroy people. You activate a choice in them. When they stand before you, everything false in them is invited to collapse or to evolve. You don't get in the ring with their demons. You simply stand still, and those demons realize they can't coexist with your purity. And in that moment, a line is drawn. So the next time someone flinches around your peace, understand it's not your job to fix them, it's your role to reflect them. Their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to keep your energy clean, keep your alignment sacred, keep walking in truth. Because your energy, chosen one, is not just presence, it's exposure. Silent weapon. 3. Their presence makes your soul uneasy. Chosen one. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the atmosphere shift, though you said nothing, did nothing, and changed nothing about yourself? Have you ever watched people suddenly get awkward, defensive, or even aggressive simply because you were there? That isn't paranoia. That's your presence doing what it was designed to do. You are a spiritual catalyst, and when you show up, everything false gets uncomfortable. You carry a divine frequency that can't be replicated, ignored, or silenced. People who are aligned with truth feel peace around you, but those who have learned to live in darkness, they squirm. Your energy becomes like fire, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that reveals, refines, and confronts. For our God is a consuming fire. Hebrews 12:29. And because he walks with you, his fire walks with you too. It's no wonder some people feel burned by your stillness. Your presence is not just human, it's holy. There are people who will resent you without cause, speak against you without reason, or avoid you without explanation. But look deeper. What did you really do to them? Most of the time, the answer is nothing at all. You just showed up as yourself, and that was enough to expose the fractures in their foundation. Think about it. Why do some people become defensive in your peace? Why does your silence provoke more than someone else's loudness? Why does your purity feel like a threat to those who claim to be righteous? Because when someone has become comfortable in deception, truth feels like violence. Your presence, chosen one, is like standing in front of a holy mirror. You don't shame people, but they feel shame. You don't accuse them, but they feel accused. You don't confront them, but everything hidden in them starts surfacing like lava. And they don't always know how to respond to that, so instead, they resent you. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. John 3:20. You are not the problem, you are the light. But light always stings the eyes of those who have been living too long in shadows. Let's look at Fred Rogers, also known as Mr. Rogers. He was one of the gentlest, kindest men in modern memory, and yet even he was mocked, criticized, and misunderstood. Why? Because his purity, his unwavering kindness, his spiritual innocence, it made cynical people feel exposed. He didn't condemn, but his presence stirred people's souls in ways they didn't expect. That's the paradox of a chosen one. Peace can be more disruptive than conflict. You may have noticed that some people begin to gossip about you not because of what you've done, but because of who you are. They whisper behind your back, twist your silence into arrogance, and frame your discernment as judgment. But that's not your fault. They are not reacting to your actions. They're reacting to the version of themselves that they meet when you're near. You didn't shame them, but your energy made it impossible for them to wear their mask. And in that moment, they had two options: evolve or attack. Sadly, many choose the latter. Think of Harriet Tubman, the quiet revolutionary. She didn't seek fame. She wasn't loud. She didn't have weapons or armies. She just had light, and that light disrupted an empire of darkness. Her presence, her courage, her conviction, they made even the most hardened slave masters tremble. Why? Because she carried the type of authority that made evil feel exposed. She didn't have to threaten anyone. She simply had to appear. Chosen one, your presence carries that same spiritual voltage. You were born to expose what others have hidden, not by speaking, but simply by being. People don't flee from you because you're dangerous. They flee because of the truth you radiate. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. Proverbs 15:3. When God walks with you, people feel watched not because you're judging them, but because the Spirit in you activates their awareness of God. And some people aren't ready for that kind of intimacy with truth. Have you noticed how often people blame you for their emotional chaos when all you did was hold your peace? How your silence is twisted into pride, your focus into coldness, your discernment into arrogance. It's not about you, chosen one. It's about their internal war. You just happen to be the trigger that brought it to the surface. And what about those who ghost you after a moment of connection? You saw them. You really saw them, not just their curated personality, but the pain behind their eyes, the contradiction in their spirit, the battle under their smile. And that kind of seeing feels like invasion to a soul unready for deliverance. So they run, but not from you, from the confrontation you activated within them. Look at Jane Goodall, the renowned primatologist. She walked into jungles, not to control or dominate, but to observe and understand. Yet even in that gentle presence, animals and later, people responded to her with extreme sensitivity. Her energy was non-threatening, but powerful. That's the kind of presence you carry. You don't come to overpower, yet your frequency reorders everything around you. That's why some people shut down around you. It's not that they hate you, it's that they no longer know how to pretend. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. You were never meant to blend in. Your presence was designed to stand out, not through attention-seeking, but through quiet disruption. Chosen one, understand this. Your very existence is a confrontation to systems built on lies. You don't have to expose anyone, they expose themselves in your presence. You don't have to uncover hidden motives, the light within you draws them out. And you don't have to raise your voice to defend your anointing, because your very being speaks louder than anything you could say. So when people retreat from you, gossip about you, or blame you for their discomfort, remember it's not personal, it's spiritual. Their soul is reacting to yours. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. The spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord, searching all his innermost parts. Proverbs 20:27. Your spirit was lit by God to illuminate rooms, expose illusions, and awaken dormant truths in others. And not everyone is ready for that kind of awakening. So don't dim your light to ease their discomfort. Don't shrink to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Don't apologize for being the holy mirror God sent into their lives. Keep showing up. Keep being still. Keep carrying that rare purity that turns rooms upside down without uttering a word. Because your presence, chosen one, is a fire. It purifies, it heals. But to those not ready, it also burns. And that's not your fault. That's your calling. Silent weapon. 4. They walk away and everything falls apart. Chosen one, do you truly understand what happens when you leave someone's life? Most don't until it's too late. Most don't notice the divine force you carried until they watch everything unravel in your absence. You were never just a friend, never just a partner, never just a presence. You were a spiritual assignment, and the moment you walk away, that divine thread holding everything together is cut. People often think loss is just emotional, but when a chosen one walks away, the damage isn't just felt in the heart, it ripples through the spirit. It affects atmospheres, relationships, even outcomes. Why? Because you weren't just connected by chance. You were planted by heaven to bring alignment, favor, and supernatural stability to a space that was already on the verge of falling apart. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Psalm 37:23. Your steps weren't random. You didn't stumble into their life. You were sent. And while you were there, things flowed that no one could explain: peace in the midst of chaos, provision in the midst of lack, clarity in the midst of confusion. But none of it looked obvious, because chosen ones don't announce their miracles. They move in quiet authority. How many people have underestimated you until you were gone? How many environments fell into disarray after you left, yet they blamed everything else but your absence? Let's look at Robin Williams, the brilliant mind whose humor carried light into millions of hearts. People laughed in his presence, felt safe, felt warm even when he was silently battling inner storms. But when he left this world, the magnitude of what he carried became undeniable. Suddenly, those who brushed past him realized they were standing next to a spiritual wellspring, and now it was gone. That's what happens when a chosen one departs. The energy that once anchored the space dissolves, and what was hidden becomes exposed. You, chosen one, have been a quiet intercessor in people's lives. You've prayed for them when they didn't know it. You've calmed storms without ever raising your voice. You've absorbed chaos and transformed it into peace, yet most never saw it, because they were too distracted by your calm. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. That's what you area divine peacemaker. Not by suppressing problems, but by carrying such an anointing that the storm ceases when you walk in, and when you leave. The winds start howling again. Sometimes people confuse your presence for coincidence. They assume things were working just fine. But wasn't it strange how opportunities started closing the moment you stepped away? How relationships began to unravel? How peace turned to tension, doors shut, and their world began to spin without direction? They never realized it was your anointing keeping the spiritual roof from collapsing. Think of Maya Angelou. Her presence in any room commanded grace and wisdom. She didn't need to dominate to influence. She didn't need to argue to shift minds. And after her passing, the cultural void was undeniable. People didn't just mourn the poet. They mourned the presence, the wisdom, the covering. That's the type of loss your departure creates, if they don't speak of it. Here's something most don't realize until it's too late. Being connected to a chosen one brings favor by association. Blessings overflow not just to you but through you. You've been a conduit for heaven's mercy. And when that connection is severed, the overflow dries up. Touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Psalm 105:15. It's not just a warning, it's a spiritual law. Dishonor a chosen one, and you invite disorder. Disconnect from them carelessly, and you open the door to chaos. Why do you think their world collapses when you finally walk away? Because they were never sustaining themselves. They were surviving on the grace you brought with you. It's like having a roof and never realizing it until it's gone, and the storm rolls in. You were the covering, not loudly, not forcefully, but spiritually, and when you leave, the weather changes. Look at Chester Bennington, lead singer of Linkin Park. Behind the music, he carried a weight that resonated with millions who couldn't put words to their pain. He was a spiritual vessel, even through rock and rebellion. But his departure triggered an avalanche of grief, not just from fans, but from people who didn't even know how much he meant to their healing. His presence held things together until it didn't. Chosen one, this is why your discernment about who you stay connected to is so vital. Not everyone deserves access to the favor you carry. Not everyone is ready to honor what you bring. And some only realize the magnitude of your presence after it's gone, when the walls crack, the blessings dry up, and the peace evaporates. And yet, you never walked in arrogance. You didn't boast. You didn't demand recognition. You simply showed up with your heart open and your spirit grounded. That's why losing you becomes a spiritual consequence, not just a personal regret. Do two walk together unless they have agreed to do so? Amos 3:3. Every connection must carry spiritual agreement. And when that agreement is violated through dishonor, betrayal, or neglect, you are released. And when you leave, heaven leaves with you. Now think about the people who ghosted you, talked behind your back, or dismissed your value. What has happened in their life since then? How many closed doors have followed your departure? How many storms did they enter once they pushed you out? They thought you were replaceable. They thought they could find someone else with your peace, your prayers, your anointing. But they were wrong. When the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. Proverbs 29:2. When a righteous presence departs, groaning begins not because of punishment, but because of divine absence. Take Anthony Bourdain, again, from a different angle. His physical departure shocked the world, but even more revealing was the sudden awareness of how much he held together. Cultures, stories, broken Archie's presence was a thread, and the unraveling that followed revealed just how vital he was. You, chosen one, are a thread too. You've been the connection point, the anchor, the stabilizer, often without credit. But when that thread is pulled, the tapestry unravels. Not because you cursed anyone, but because your blessing is no longer present. So, chosen one, don't ever doubt your power. Don't ever downplay your departure. When you walk away, things fall apart, not out of revenge, but because your very existence was the glue holding things in place. And if they fail to honor your presence, the consequences are not yours to carry. Your assignment was divine, and once complete, your exit becomes divine as well. Silent weapon. 5. Their growth will humiliate your stagnation. Chosen one, isn't it strange how the very people who doubted you are now forced to watch you evolve in silence? How the ones who mocked your beginnings, disrespected your process, and counted you out are suddenly speechless as you rise, radiant with purpose. They thought they had the final word. They thought their betrayal would be the breaking point. What they didn't realize is that breaking a chosen one never leads to destruction. It leads to activation. You weren't crushed. You were catalyzed. Every lie told about you became fertilizer for deeper roots. Every rejection you endured was not a roadblock, it was the wind beneath wings you hadn't yet stretched. While they sat stagnant, confident you would stay buried, you transformed. And now your glow exposes their immobility without a single word. What they meant for evil, God intended for good, to accomplish what is now being done. Genesis 50:20. That verse isn't just a promise. It's your living testimony. You didn't just survive what they did. You transmuted it. You turned betrayal into boldness, setbacks into setups, and silence into strength. Why do you think your progress feels like judgment to them even when you say nothing? Why does your peace offend those who once delighted in your pain? Could it be that your growth is now holding up a mirror they can't bear to look into? This is the silent weapon few talk about, the shame others feel when you thrive without them. You don't flaunt your success. You don't retaliate. You simply move forward. And yet, every level you ascend to becomes a spotlight on the fact that they stayed exactly where they were, bitter, stagnant, and spiritually asleep. Think about Tyler Perry. Homeless, laughed at, rejected by the industry people were sure he would never rise. But he didn't just built an empire. He let his process become his platform. And now, some of the same critics who mocked him watch his name scroll across movie screens and studio gates, not because he clapped back, but because he outgrew their expectations in full view. You, chosen one, carry that same quiet defiance. You don't compete, you transcend. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Isaiah 40:31. That's what's happening to you. You waited, you suffered, you endured. And now, you're soaring. And those who expected you to crawl forever are choking on the altitude of your elevation. Let's be honest, some people aren't shocked that you made it. They're embarrassed that they didn't grow while you did. They stayed stuck in old cycles. You broke out, They rehearsed old offenses. You healed. They clung to pride. You surrendered. And now they see you shining, and that light becomes a form of exposure. You didn't change to prove them wrong. You changed to prove God right. The stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118:22. You were rejected, dismissed, overlooked, but now you're being positioned in ways they never imagined. The same voices that once dismissed you are now forced to whisper your name in conversations they never expected you to be mentioned in. Look at Viola Davis. Her skin, her voice, her background all were once considered limitations by an industry obsessed with a narrow definition of beauty. But she didn't bow. She didn't conform. She evolved. And now, she is an icon. Her growth didn't just inspire others, it challenged those who tried to box her in. Your growth, chosen one, is doing the same. And that discomfort others feel around your glow, that's conviction, not jealousy. That's their own spirit testifying that they wasted what they had while you built what they never saw coming. Have you noticed how the very people who said you were too much now mimic your energy? How they once laughed at your faith, but now try to use your language? That's not coincidence. That's conviction. You're not just rising, you're redefining what's possible for someone who chooses obedience over popularity. And still, you remain humble. You aren't doing it to be seen. You're doing it because heaven has an assignment on your life. You don't shine to spite them. You shine because that's what chosen ones do once the chains are off. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Isaiah 60:1. You tried to hide your light once, tried to fit in, tried to dim down your calling so you could avoid offending those who hadn't grown. But not anymore. God is calling you into the open, not to perform, but to reflect His glory in everything you've become. Even Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, grew up in public housing, poor and dismissed. But instead of letting that limit him, he let it fuel him. He turned his humble beginnings into a multi-billion-dollar vision. And he did it while critics doubted, mocked, and tried to sabotage. His growth didn't just enrich him, it exposed the smallness of the minds that tried to hold him back. And yours is doing the same. Now, ask yourself this. How many people treated you like an option only to later watch you become the standard? How many people spoke over your destiny only to eat the fruit of their own words when you kept climbing? They didn't expect you to rise because they never saw your roots. But God did. And every storm they sent to break you watered those roots deeper. That's why your glow is divine justice, not revenge, not ego, but God's way of saying, I will prepare a table before you in the presence of your enemies. Psalm 23:5. You don't have to get even. You just have to keep growing, because every step forward you take leaves a trail of conviction behind you. And while you extend grace, those who hurt you are faced with a sobering truth. They didn't just lose a connection, they lost a move of God. So, chosen one, grow, evolve, radiate, not out of spite, but out of surrender. Not to prove anything, but to fulfill everything God placed inside you. Because your growth isn't just a testimony, it's a warning. And the ones who once mocked your process will have no choice but to witness your ascension. Silent weapon. 6. They reflect your shadow back to you. Chosen one, have you ever watched someone flinch in your presence? Not because of anything you said, but simply because you were. Have you seen how uncomfortable some people get, not because you judged them, but because they saw something in you they didn't want to face in themselves? That is your silent power, reflection. You don't have to preach. You don't have to call anyone out. Your very essence becomes a mirror. Not the kind that flatters, the kind that reveals. And what gets reflected? The parts they buried, denied, or twisted just to survive. You were never trying to be a threat. You were just showing up fully in your light. But that light, it's not soft to those living in shadows. It burns, not because it's cruel, but because it's true. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. John 3:20. Your light exposes not by force, but by frequency. You don't condemn people. You convict them without even trying. What happens when someone's mask begins to melt not from accusation, but from exposure? How does a person react when their chaos stands beside your calm, their deceit beside your truth, their game beside your consistency? Most don't thank you. They resent you, not because you wronged them, but because you revealed them. Think of Malala Yousafzai, the young woman whose courage challenged entire systems. Her calm, dignified defiance was not loud, but it reflected an unbearable truth back to her oppressors. They saw their cruelty in contrast to her purity, and rather than facing that reflection, they tried to silence her. But her light couldn't be destroyed. It multiplied. That's what you do, chosen one. You shine so honestly that people feel exposed before you ever speak. And instead of changing, many lash out. Not because you harmed them, but because they're haunted by the version of themselves they see in you. You become the walking confrontation they didn't ask for, but desperately needed. You represent everything they could be if they let go of their ego, their fear, their illusions. And that gap between who they are and who they're called to be becomes unbearable. Have you noticed how some people accuse you of arrogance when all you did was maintain your standards? Or how they label you too much, when really you're just too authentic for their comfort? The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. Proverbs 25. That's what your presence does. It draws things out not through confrontation, but through comparison, through energy, through quiet resonance. You don't say a word about their flaws, yet they feel exposed. You don't comment on their chaos, yet they start defending it. Why? Because when your light hits their darkness, their soul reacts first, even if their mouth pretends otherwise. Let's talk about Frida Kahlo, the artist who lived with unbearable pain yet painted raw truth onto every canvas. She didn't hide her wounds, she showcased them. And in doing so, she reflected the world's hypocrisy back to itself. People were disturbed not by her flaws, but by her fearless honesty. Her art mirrored what society refused to admit, and that reflection was both healing and horrifying. You, chosen one, mirror people in a similar way. You don't expose them to hurt them. You simply carry truth too loudly for lies to live comfortably nearby. Have you ever noticed how someone grows distant after a moment of spiritual closeness with you? They suddenly stop replying, avoid eye contact, or withdraw emotionally, and you wonder, did I say something wrong? But the truth is, you didn't have to say anything. Your stillness already spoke volumes. Your presence surfaced something they weren't ready to face. As water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. Proverbs 27:19. You don't just reflect their appearance, you reflect their condition, their emotional climate, their spiritual reality. And when that reflection doesn't match the persona they've been performing, cognitive dissonance erupts. That's why your kindness feels threatening to someone who thrives on manipulation. Why your peace is infuriating to those who live in chaos. Why your loyalty feels suffocating to someone addicted to betrayal. They begin to see it, the gap, the distance between who they present themselves to be and who they are beneath the layers. And instead of facing that truth, many run. They ghost you, sabotage the connection, or attack your character. But they're not really fighting you. They're fighting the reflection. Think of Nelson Mandela. After decades of unjust imprisonment, he emerged with dignity, forgiveness, and clarity. And suddenly, the world had to face its own ugliness, its racism, cruelty, and corruption reflected in the man they tried to destroy. His peaceful walk through injustice became a mirror for systems of oppression. His presence convicted nations. Chosen one, this is the divine paradox. You are misunderstood, not because you say too much, but because your existence says what others won't admit. People don't destroy mirrors because they're harmful. They destroy them because they can't face what's staring back. But if we walk in the light, as He is in the light, we have fellowship with one another. 1 John 1:7. Those who are willing to grow won't fear your reflection. They'll be drawn to it. They'll see your integrity and be inspired. But those who are still hiding will see your reflection as a threat to the facade they've built. That's why some people break down around you, why others lash out, why a few try to twist your character into something false. They are not seeing you. They're seeing themselves, and they don't like what's showing up. Anthony Hopkins, in his personal transformation, once said, "Being silent and alone has taught me more about myself than any mirror ever could." That's exactly what your presence does for others. You become a living, breathing stillness that reflects what no external mirror can reveal. So, chosen one, never shrink to protect others from their own reflection. Never dilute your energy to make their illusions more comfortable. You were never meant to be a flattering mirror. You were born to be an honest one. And yes, it will cost you. People will misunderstand you. Some will hate you. A few will try to destroy you. But the ones who are truly ready for growth, they will thank you, because you showed them the truth even when it hurt. So stand tall, walk boldly, be the mirror, not to condemn, but to awaken. Because your reflection, chosen one, is not your opinion, it's their awakening. Silent weapon. 7. They pray and things start shifting. Chosen one, never forget this truth. Your voice may sound quiet on earth, but it roars in the heavens. You may walk with humility, rarely demanding attention, but when you bow your head in prayer, realms respond. Heaven listens. The spiritual atmosphere bends. Why? Because you don't pray from pride. You pray from alignment, from the place of sacred authority you carry sometimes, reluctantly but always powerfully. People often misjudge your silence. They assume that because you didn't retaliate, you didn't respond. But what they fail to realize is that when you kept your mouth shut before man, you opened it before God. And that shift? It changed everything. The prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. James 5:16. Your words don't echo into the void. They are guided missiles, precise, holy, undeniable. You don't wish harm. You ask for justice. You don't curse names. You lay them on the altar. And once you do that, chosen one, the outcome is no longer yours to decide. Heaven takes over. Have you ever noticed how things begin falling apart in someone's life not long after you prayed for release? How peace seems to vanish from their space, opportunities begin to crumble, and an internal unrest overtakes them. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual cause and effect. What happens when a chosen one surrenders the fight to God? What shifts in the unseen realm when you stop arguing and start interceding? The answer is simple. Everything. You didn't attack them. You entrusted them. You said, God, I take my hands off this. I leave them in yours. And just like that, the storm began not from spite, but from divine correction. Look at Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who stood against the Nazi regime. He didn't fight with swords or rage prayed. He interceded, and his spiritual resistance echoed louder than armies. Though he was imprisoned and eventually martyred, his prayers still ring in history, having helped dismantle one of the darkest systems of oppression the world has seen. That's the unseen power you hold, chosen one. The moment you turn from retaliation and press your spirit into prayer, You begin moving mountains that no human strength could touch. Your whisper to heaven becomes thunder in the enemy's camp. You weren't being passive, you were being precise. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. But catch this. Sometimes the way you condemn those tongues isn't through public rebuttal, it's through private prayer. You hand it over, and God answers with storms. And these aren't storms of destruction, they're storms of revelation, storms that strip illusions, storms that humble pride, storms that bring down false altars and hidden idols. You didn't start the chaos. You simply stepped aside and let truth reign. Do you remember how many people underestimated you because you didn't fight back? How they thought your silence meant defeat? They didn't know you had a secret place. They didn't know your prayers weren't complaints, they were decrees. Look at Harriet Beecher Stowe, the author of Uncle Tom's Cabin. She didn't lead armies or hold office, but she prayed and wrote. And through her spiritual alignment, she helped dismantle American slavery one page at a time. President Lincoln himself said, "So, you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." Never doubt the force of a righteous soul aligned with divine truth. Now pause and consider this. How many people are walking through spiritual droughts because they lost the one person praying for them, you? How many situations are unraveling, not because of punishment, but because the spiritual umbrella you once provided is gone? You see, while they were mocking you, you were protecting them. While they were gossiping, you were interceding. While they were planting betrayal, you were covering their name in secret prayer. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Matthew 5:44. You did that. Not out of weakness, but out of strength. You didn't ask for revenge. You asked for mercy. And when mercy was rejected, justice was released. Chosen one, this is the sacred irony of your assignment. You bless even those who curse you. But once you release them to God, the consequence of dishonor becomes inevitable, because God protects what He appoints. And when He appoints you, any attack against you becomes a spiritual lawsuit against heaven. Think about Florence Nightingale. They laughed at her, opposed her, discredited her compassion as hysteria. But she prayed, she pressed on. And soon, entire nations had to humble themselves before her reforms. Her quiet strength and sacred resolve didn't need revenge. It needed vision. And that vision, through prayer, healed generations. That's the impact your spirit has when aligned. You don't have to argue. You just have to remain anointed. You don't have to threaten. You just have to pray in power. And when you do, the shaking begins. So ask yourself, how many people misunderstood your prayers as passivity, not realizing you were shifting dimensions? How many thought your silence was weakness, not realizing you were hosting courtroom proceedings in the throne room of God? You didn't curse them, but you took your name off their life and placed their name on God's altar. And from that moment forward, the covering was lifted. The grace expired. The protection turned inward toward you. The Lord is my defender. I shall not be moved. Psalm 62:6. And when God defends you, no human plot can stand. Some will say, it's karma, but we know better. It's divine justice, the quiet kind, the holy kind, the kind that doesn't seek revenge, but alignment. And alignment always brings exposure. Look at Aung San Suu Kyi, who spent years under house arrest, yet continued to pray and advocate for the oppressed in Myanmar. Her prayers shifted not only hearts, but history. Though attacked, silenced, and isolated, she called on heaven, and heaven responded in waves that moved nations. You carry that same fire. So, chosen one, don't underestimate what happens when you pray. You don't need to shout to make things shake. When you say, God, I release them to you, heaven begins to respond with holy fire. Not to destroy but to purify, to expose, to restore order. Because your prayer is not just communication, it's confrontation. And when you intercede from the place of brokenness, alignment, and surrender, God moves not just for you, but through you. And the results? They're unmistakable. Storms rise, masks fall, and real justice descends. Silent weapon. 8. They don't retaliate, they transcend. Chosen one, there comes a moment in your journey when people expect you to fight back. They expect fire for fire, insult for insult, pain for pain. They bait you, they provoke you, they try to drag you through the same mud they wallow in, but you don't respond the way they expect. Why? Because you've grown past it. Because the pit is no longer your environment. Because you've learned that true power is not in reacting, it's in rising. You don't retaliate, you transcend. Do not repay evil for evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. 1 Peter 3:9. That verse isn't just scripture to you, it's how you live. You've learned that vengeance drains, but elevation multiplies. That revenge might feel good to the flesh, but transcendence feeds the spirit. They thought you'd throw the same dirt back. They assumed you'd clap back, expose them, drag their name like they tried to drag yours. But instead, you went higher. You stayed silent. You kept walking. And that silence, that refusal to sink, it broke them more than retaliation ever could. Why does your indifference cause more discomfort than your engagement? Why do people spiral when you don't respond? Because your stillness signals that they've lost access. Your silence isn't passive, it's prophetic. It says, I no longer live at the level where your weapons work. Think about Michelle Obama, who famously said, when they go low, we go high. That wasn't just elegance, it was strategy. Dignity isn't weakness. It's warfare at a higher frequency. And her refusal to engage in petty drama only made her more powerful, more respected, more untouchable. That's the posture you've assumed. Chosen one. You no longer need to fight dirty, because your growth has made their attacks obsolete. You no longer live in the battlefield. They're fighting a ghost. What's more devastating to an enemy than realizing you're not just walking away, you're never coming back? That you're not retaliating, but evolving. That the war they tried to start never got a response because you already outgrew the battlefield. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Stillness is not stagnation. It's surrender to divine warfare. It's knowing that God will defend the places your words cannot reach. You don't need to waste energy throwing stones when heaven is already building your throne. Now consider Malcolm Gladwell, the author and thinker who's been criticized, misquoted, and mocked yet. He doesn't retaliate. He simply keeps writing, keeps growing, keeps reshaping thought. His transcendence is not loud, but it's undeniable. The critic stays stuck. He stays evolving. Chosen one. You've likely seen it before. People who go out of their way to tarnish your name. People who try to provoke a reaction. People who twist your silence into guilt, your boundaries into arrogance. But none of it moves you anymore. Why? Because healing rewired you. Because prayer grounded you. Because favor redirected you. And now, the same people who once had power over your emotions can't even find a way to enter your thoughts. That's why they spiral. That's why they rant. That's why they scream into the silence you left behind. Because when someone no longer has access to your energy, they lose control over their illusion of power. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Psalm 23:5. Notice, the table isn't prepared in the absence of enemies, but in their presence. God doesn't need to remove them to elevate you. He lets them watch while you ascend. You're not trying to make them jealous. You're not trying to win. You're just becoming who you were always meant to be. And that becoming, that elevation, it exposes everything they tried to hide under the guise of superiority. Look at Brandon Sanderson, the best-selling author who was ridiculed by critics for being too prolific or uncool. He didn't engage. He didn't fire back. He simply continued creating at levels his critics couldn't comprehend. His transcendence wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in producing legacy while they wrote opinions. How many times have people returned to your life expecting the old version of you, only to find you've outgrown every doorway they once entered through? How many times have they tried to bait you, only to discover their chaos no longer pulls at your peace? You're not avoiding them. You've just out-elevated the conversation. You've moved into a space they can't reach, not because you blocked them, but because spiritual gravity pulled you higher. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Isaiah 40:31. You're not in the mud anymore. You're soaring. And when you soar, the noise on the ground sounds distant, irrelevant, and small. The truth is, nothing disarms an enemy more than being ignored by someone who once loved deeply. Indifference from a soul that used to intercede, cry, and care feels like thunder, because it signals that you're no longer tethered, not emotionally, spiritually, or energetically, and that realization breaks them. Not because you punished them, but because you healed, and that healing became their mirror. Consider Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, who was mocked for his gentleness in a cynical world, but he never stooped, he never fired back. And decades later, he remains an icon of love, while many of his critics vanished into noise. His refusal to retaliate was his most enduring weapon. Chosen one, this is your gift. Not to defeat your enemies by force, but to outgrow them by grace. You were never meant to stay down in the pit, throwing stones with those who dwell in bitterness. You were meant to ascend to, climb so high that no insult can reach, no slander can stick, no betrayal can bind. And as you rise, remember, transcendence is the loudest silence there is. You don't have to say a word. Your glow speaks for itself. Your peace answers louder than any argument. So when they throw dirt, keep walking. When they spread lies, keep building. When they try to bait you into old battles, keep rising. Because you're not coming back, and you're not coming down. Silent weapon 9. They let karma handle you. Chosen one, you've learned a sacred truth that many still resist. You don't have to fight to win. You don't have to plot revenge or craft clever clapbacks. When you walk in divine alignment, justice is not your job, it's your covering. While others scramble for control, you stay seated, and that seat, it's one of spiritual authority. You understand one universal law. What they send out will return to them. You don't chase payback. You don't pray for their downfall. You simply let go. And when you let go, the universe picks up the case. God takes the file, and karma begins her quiet, devastating work. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6:7. That's not a threat, it's a law. And you, chosen one, don't need to enforce it. You just need to step aside. Have you ever wondered why the people who wronged you start facing the same situations they once wished upon you? Why their circle collapses, their lies catch up with them, and their peace dries out? It's not magic. It's not coincidence. It's the return. The betrayal they sowed, it grows. The slander they spread, it finds its way back. The manipulation they used, it corners them. And by the time it does, you're long gone elevated, healed, and unavailable. Think about Princess Diana, a woman attacked relentlessly by tabloids, trapped in a system that tried to silence her spirit. But she didn't retaliate with vengeance, she walked with grace. And after her departure, everything that once tried to diminish her began to fall apart from the inside. Karma didn't rush, but it arrived, and it spoke clearly. You cannot harm the anointed without consequence. That's the weapon of your silence, chosen one. It doesn't need a trigger, just time. The Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him. Isaiah 30:18. And you've waited not for revenge, but for peace. You trusted that what is done in darkness cannot hide forever. And now, one by one, you've watched the seeds they planted bear bitter fruit. The irony, you didn't destroy them. Their own actions did. You see, when a chosen one walks away, they don't slam the door, they open a mirror. And behind that mirror is a courtroom where the charges are spiritual and the judge is eternal. You didn't place them on trial. They placed themselves the moment they touched what God marked as untouchable. Touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm. Psalm 105:15. That wasn't poetic metaphor. It was divine warning. But you didn't invoke wrath. You extended grace. You offered forgiveness. You interceded even when your heart was breaking. And when that grace was abused, you didn't curse them. You released them. And that's when the real judgment began. Let's look at Nelson Mandela, who endured injustice for decades. Imprisoned, slandered, isolated, yet he never called for vengeance. And when he walked free, it wasn't to punish, but to rebuild. Meanwhile, the system that sought to destroy him crumbled under its own corruption. Mandela didn't retaliate. He transcended. And karma, patient and just, did what he never had to. Chosen one, this is the paradox of your power. Your lack of reaction becomes the catalyst for their unraveling. You weren't trying to hurt them, you were trying to heal. But when your light became unbearable, they chose to mock it, twist it, or silence it. And in doing so, they didn't curse you, they cursed themselves. Have you noticed how the very ones who lied on you eventually get exposed? How those who tried to block your blessings are now struggling to open doors? It's not because you hexed them. It's because you removed your presence and, with it, the protection they didn't know they had. Vengeance is mine. I will repay, says the Lord. Romans 12:19. That verse has comforted your spirit many times, hasn't it? Not because you wanted revenge, but because it released you from needing to prove anything. You don't need to clap back when God claps louder. You don't need to curse when your silence speaks divine volumes. Look at Colin Kaepernick, the man who kneeled in silence and paid a massive cost. He never retaliated with anger. But over time, the same institutions that cast him out began to echo the very truth he knelt for. The world caught up, truth caught up, and karma handled what he never needed to avenge. This is the essence of your final weapon, chosen one. Stillness while storms form behind you. You walk away not in rage, but in release. You go higher while the seeds they sowed begin to sprout judgment. And by the time they realize what's happening, you're already gone far above the noise, wrapped in peace, walking in purpose. So ask yourself, how many battles have you won by doing nothing but healing? How many plots have unraveled while you were busy building your next chapter? How many enemies have self-destructed while you stayed focused on destiny? They expected a reaction, they planned for a war, but you gave them something far more terrifying, your absence and God's presence. And the universe keeps the receipts. Just like Oprah Winfrey, once targeted with ridicule, racism, and dismissal, she didn't retaliate. She ascended. And every insult hurled her way only built the steps beneath her success. Those who tried to bury her were left buried in the echoes of their own bitterness. You've done the same, haven't you? You didn't shout. You didn't scheme. You just watched the boomerang return with divine precision. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27. They didn't fall because you pushed. They fell because they dug in darkness and forgot that justice loves daylight. Chosen one, rest in this. Your silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is strategy. It is sacred. And the greatest ending isn't dramatic, it's divine. It's when karma, with heaven's permission, finishes what you never needed to start. So walk away boldly, forgive fully, and trust the process. Because in the end, you won't have to say a word. Karma will say it for you. Chosen one, if you've made it to this moment, I want you to pause and let that sink in you. Didn't just listen to a message, you just walked through a spiritual unveiling. From the very first word to this final breath, what you experienced wasn't just information, it was revelation. A map through the shadows that tried to dismantle you silently. And now, you see it all. You see the tactics, you see the patterns, you see the spiritual warfare hidden behind soft smiles and subtle sabotage. But most of all, you see yourself. You see your strength. You see how none of it worked. You see how even in silence, even in isolation, even when you were misunderstood and misrepresented, your soul kept rising. And that, chosen one, is your true weapon. You were never meant to retaliate. You were meant to transcend. You were never called to prove your power through noise. Your assignment was to embody it in stillness. And now, armed with the truth of these 9 silent weapons, you are no longer caught off guard. You are prepared. You are no longer asking, "Why is this happening to me?" but declaring, "This won't stop me." Every attempt to break you was actually heaven, allowing the enemy to expose himself. Because what can't kill you exposes who tried. And from here on out, you're not going back to confusion. You're not shrinking to make anyone comfortable. You're not silencing your gift for the sake of peace. You are the peace. You are the storm. You are the judgment wrapped in light. Thank you for staying with me through this message. Your time, your presence, your spirit means more than words can fully express. To every soul who watched, reflected, felt the fire, I honor you. And to those of you who have supported this mission through super thanks, I am deeply grateful. Your seed doesn't just keep this work alive, it helps it grow. It helps it reach others who are still in the dark, still questioning, still fighting silent battles. But even if you don't give today, know this from the bottom of my heart. You are still valued. You are still loved. You are still part of this calling. Your spirit being here is already a gift to this mission. Thank you for walking this road with me. Now, as you return to your own path, I speak this over your life. May every weapon that was formed in secret be shattered in the open. May your silence carry weight. May your energy demand truth. May your prayers release judgment. And may those who underestimated you realize too late you were never small. You were just strategic. May the favor that follows you be louder than any insult. May the peace you carry be protection against every unseen arrow. And may your glow, your growth, and your grace be the loudest testimony of divine vengeance done right. If this message confirmed what your soul already knew, type "I am still standing" in the comments as a declaration to the heavens and a reminder to yourself. And if it stirred something holy in you, feel free to share this with someone else who needs to be reminded. They don't have to fight dirty to win. They just have to keep rising. Until next time, chosen one, stay grounded, stay elevated, and remember, your power doesn't need to be loud to be real. It just needs to be holy. I love you, I see you, and I'll meet you in the next revelation.